This is the Simpit. I'm your host, Shaun Cole, and today we're here to take a preview of Week 5 in iRacing NASCAR Fixed Truck Series. And this week we're off to Gateway Motorsport Park in Madison, Illinois. This track was recently added to iRacing, and for many drivers it'll be their first time driving here. The track measures in at 1.25 miles and is a 4-turn track with 2 ends. Like Darlington, it is a paperclip layout, with turns 1 and 2 being much sharper than turns 3 and 4. Turns 1 and 2 are not only sharper, but have an extreme variable banking that offers multiple lines through the corner, although not all of them are fast. Turns 3 and 4 are much flatter, much wider, and bear a lot of resemblance to Phoenix's 3 and 4. Lap times here in the trucks will be in the high 34s to mid 35s with a fair amount of tire wear and fall off. So for this week, I'm much more in the pattern of the way I'd like these shows to go. It's Tuesday morning, the track change just happened yesterday, and we now have a situation where I can show you what I did to get up to speed and run my qualifying run in time for you to hopefully use it to your advantage if you're running in the trucks as well. I have once again called upon my buddy Andrew Fayash to help me out and get me up to speed. With this once again being a newer track, even Andrew had to take a bit of time to find his way around. But once he did, it was apparent that Gateway wasn't going to be as much about speed, but it was going to be more about driving with finesse and with patience to find your way around this very difficult track. Now once Andrew got settled and things started to look good for him and he could show me the line, I started watching the way he was driving the track. Meanwhile, he would actually be describing what he was doing while he was doing it. Once he told me a few things about the way he was driving, and once I'd asked a few questions just to clarify so I knew before heading out, it was time for me to give it a try. Despite knowing the proper driving line, it still took me a handful of laps to get it right. I found it nearly impossible to get out of turn 2 with any kind of speed. Knowing that I would be braking somewhere between the green cone on the left and the caution lights on the right, I was still having a hard time slowing down enough to hit the optimal line. I had a tendency to enter the corner late or not slow down enough, both of which were putting me up on the high line. Heading down into turn 3, I was targeting the caution lights on the right and the white line that goes across the track as my warning for turn in and braking. In turns 3, I also had a problem of turning in too late and pushing wide. I was almost oversetting up the corner and trying to overturn the truck on entry. Turn 3 actually requires a much earlier and a much slower turn in than you would expect. After a few laps, I started to get the hang of the driving line and what kind of crazy throttle control that Gateway requires. And then I started to hit some good laps, and I would see my lap time starting to drop. We would do a combination of lead follow, with me following Andrew, followed by Andrew following me, with him constantly making adjustments to my line. I brought that braking point in just a little bit earlier, like a blink of an eye, and it really helped me get into turn 1 earlier. I also found myself turning in a little more aggressively and using about half of my total braking pressure a little past a third of the way into turn 1. I am aiming my truck for the 2 black lines in the ground right in the middle of the track. This allowed me to start really hitting turns 1 and 2 well and only having to use good throttle control to exit the corner safely. The same was true for turn 3's entry as well as I settled myself down. Broke a touch earlier, and then I started to find the line there as well. After a later and gentler entry than I had been doing earlier, I found the truck could drive in fairly hard, using gentle 1/3 braking and again shooting for an entry about midway up and down on the track. This also allowed me to really start focusing on picking up the gas smoothly and feathering my way out of turn 4. Now we are starting to make some progress. I dropped my times from running high 35s down to the low 35s and getting to be about as fast as I was going to be while running in hot lap configuration. Now let's go ahead and take a look at one of my better laps from practice. It starts out coming out of turn 4 with a good run. This will propel you to about 163 miles per hour at the end of the front stretch. A little before the green cone on the right, I am off the gas and applying about half braking pressure. A moment later, I actually start my turn in and I'm aiming the truck for the lower of those two black lines. I'm reducing the brake pressure as the truck nears the 1/3 mark through the corner. I am off the brake and letting the truck coast for about 3 truck lengths, running between those two black lines on the ground. At this point, you will be down to about 105 miles per hour, and if you gently apply the gas here, you can come back on to about 1/3 to half throttle point. Once settled, you can run the second half of the corner at half throttle, carefully steering your way out of the corner and slowly drifting wide. As you crest the bump that is at the end of the corner, you can be back at full throttle and hopefully aiming that truck down the backstretch. At the end of that straight, you will be doing 160 miles per hour, and about a truck length before the caution lights on the right, you will be adding a less than half brake pressure and as little as 1/3 if done right, along with a little bit of gentle steering, turning for a mid-corner entry into turn 3. It's okay to push up a little bit here, but you want to stay on the dark part of the asphalt. At mid-corner, you will be down to about 110 miles per hour and coasting for about 5 to 8 truck lengths before bringing back the gas. As you do, again, it will be critical that it is smooth and only to about halfway as we ride our way around this very long corner. There's a break in the grass on the left before pit lane that marks the spot that you can start to roll the throttle back to full and then let the truck track out as well to the corner exit and crossing the start-finish line at about 152 miles an hour with a lap time of, in this case, 35.081, and my personal best at that time. From there, Andrew and I wanted to work on some race situational awareness, and this started out by doing a little bit of inside and outside game, with me running on the outside and Andrew running on the inside, making sure that I stayed up in that second lane multiple laps around the track. This not only gave me practice with that driving line, but also started to give me awareness for how much room that lower truck takes up on the track. I found my braking points to be about the same, but would turn in much later and be fine making the corner. The trouble on the high line was getting hooked up mid-corner and fighting a loose truck coming off of the corners. We then switched up and Andrew forced me down to the lower line. This is where I learned how tough and impossible that lower line would be, especially in turns 1 and 2. I don't think I could even get a good enough run off of 2 to make any kind of pass stick. But again, it gave me an idea of how much room the upper truck will need. There were actually a few times that I forced Andrew up the track, and during a race that would be unacceptable, certainly not cool to my other competitors. In the end, we learned that the best place to be when running too wide is on the outside of turns 1 and 2 and on the inside of turns 3 and 4. So after about an hour and a half of practice, we were done. But before we left, we actually took some time to talk about how things might play out during this race. We wanted to talk about strategy. We wanted to talk about the things that were going to prepare me to handle Gateway a little bit better. And that starts off with number 1, this track is very, very loose, and it's going to be hard for me and everybody else to handle this setup on this track. There's no magic trick to it. It just comes down to patience and throttle control. You can expect a lot of cautions, mostly from drivers that can't control their own trucks. The bottom line is this: if you can't control your truck for 20 to 30 laps without a self-spin or hitting the wall or some kind of an incident, then the chances are you're not ready to race. Do more practice. You get out there in the race, you're risking your safety rating, your I rating, and chances are you're going to affect the people around you when you end up coming into contact with them or affecting that race. And that takes me to my second point, and that's tire fall off. There was a lot of tire wear. It's more the heating than the tire wear that makes the truck get slower each lap. And that means we'll be pitting for new tires at nearly every opportunity. However, depending on track position and how worn the tires are, we might not pit on a caution inside of 8 laps to go. Also, since the truck is brutally loose here, we will make sure not to let our crew add fuel, and hopefully that will keep tightening us up as the fuel load gets lighter throughout the race. Number 3, crash avoidance, attrition, or just being there at the end. Forget our ability to drive. This is one of those tracks that beforehand they should warn all of the drivers to protect themselves at all times. Be alert, Be cautious and do your best to keep it in one piece. That alone could be worth 5 to 10 positions over those who can't control and end up wrecking their trucks. That takes me to number 4, passing. Passing is going to be difficult here. The passes will come more from the mistakes of others than the ability to get a strong run low off the corners here. My best chance of getting the pass done will be running the low line in 3 and 4, so setting people up off of 2 will be essential to being low going into 3 and 4. And number 5, bring a book because we're going to be here a while. There are going to be a lot of cautions, there are going to be a lot of laps running behind the pace car, and that could get boring, and that can take you out of the mental game when it comes to running sharp at the end for the checkered flag. And maintaining our composure lap after lap, restart after restart will be a big part of the game. And now it's time to get down to some racing, but before we do, I want to talk about one other thing that Andrew made as an observation about my driving over the last few weeks. He talked about a bunch of different passes that I was able to make on track, but then the following corner I would charge in too hard, push up wide, and give that position right back. And I'm going to have to watch out for that. He has also seen a bit of over throttle out of me when the racing gets tight. I've spun the wheels while trying to make the pass coming off the corner, got loose, and not got the pass made. And then comes one of his first comments, and while making this video, I noticed that I am still getting on the brake before I have the gas all the way off, a result of my 2-foot driving style. And I'm going to have to watch out for that as well. If I can't cure it, I'm going to have to switch myself back to that 1-foot driving style to make sure that I don't press both pedals simultaneously. So that's going to do it for this episode. I hope that you've enjoyed it. I hope I got it out early enough for you to learn something from it if you're also running in the iRacing NASCAR Fixed Truck Series. If you have any comments or questions, please direct them to our website at thesimpit.com. I will do my best to answer each and every one of them. This is the Simpit. I'm Shaun Cole, and I'll see you on the track.